About myself, um, my name is Christian Tan. I live in Amsterdam. I work as a system administrator for a mobile content provider. I play the cello, the piano, vocals, and make electronic music. And I'm involved with nakedcellist.org. I play in the Crea Orchestra, the Streich Fine String Quartet, and I make electronic music on mkultra.net. This to emphasize my musical activities, and this is how I got involved with Dying Giraffe Recordings. You can email me at christian@dyinggirafferecordings.com. I'm giving the presentation, but the majority of the work is actually done by other people for Dying Giraffe Recordings. Wouter and Ingmar are two of the major ones who took the initiative and did most of the work and all the contacts, as well as another bunch of people like Marnix, Falco, Henno, Jessica, Remy, Ties, and many, many more. There's also some companies and people who were of big inspiration to us and to me. I want to mention Magnet Tunes, a label which has similar goals as we have. They've been doing this longer than we have. They've been a big inspiration for us. We also like their slogan, which is "We're not evil." And there's a very good article in Salon from Courtney Love about what is so wrong with the music business. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what is wrong with the music business. Why is it so bad for both the artists and for the music lovers? What are we trying to do to solve that with Dying Giraffe Recordings? The problems that we encounter with our system and with our setup. Suggestions to solve those problems, and everything we do is still a work in progress. We're still trying to define how we want to do things, if our solution is working, if we are on the right way. We might be doing things in the wrong way, we might come back, we might change our minds, we might go into another direction. So it's very important that we have these discussions about if to find out if we're on the right way. So what's wrong with the music business? Basically, there are just two things wrong with the music business. Artists are screwed, and music lovers are screwed. Observe that I don't talk about, that I say music lovers. I don't say consumers. I don't say clients, because this is what it's all about. People who love music, people who love listening to music, and people who love making music. And the people involved with Dying Giraffe Recordings are people who really love to listen to music and make music. The music lovers are really screwed. Copy protection, DRM, we all know the problems with that. The whole debacle on the Sony rootkit, which installs a very big security hazard on your computer. Security protection, copy protection, so that you can't rip your CDs, and you can't play it on your iPod, you can't play it on many DVD players or car audio players because of the copy protection. The whole thing about DRM, basically DRM makes you not own your music. You just you hire the music, and if the one who has given you the license for the DRM music changes his mind, you suddenly don't have that music anymore. For example, there was a shop, I forgot the name, which has changed their DRM system, and suddenly everyone who has bought music at their shop finds that their music doesn't play anymore. Of course, there's also intercompatibility problems. You can't play your DRM music from the iTunes store on your Microsoft Zune. You can't play different brands of DRM can't be played on different brands of players. It's one example. For example, if you had bought tunes at the Microsoft Play for Sure shop, it will not play on the new Microsoft Zune MP3 player. And that's very representative of what is the problem with DRM. This is not just a problem for customers. I also talked to a guy from VCX who does adult entertainment online. They experimented with DRM for their downloads. But the problem is, because they use Microsoft Download and it was hacked every week, they had to upgrade their servers every week. And sometimes, when they upgraded their servers, something broke. So people couldn't not download and buy music from their store, and so they lost a lot of money. So they decided to do away with the DRM. They do use the watermarking though. Then there's the issue of price fixing. In Holland, where I'm from, you pay 20 euros for a CD. You can't get new CDs for much cheaper than that. There is a lot of price fixing going on. The labels have been sued for that in the United States, but all they got was a slap on the wrist and a very small fine. The choice is limited. All music from the big labels is tested for the hit potential. In fact, the big labels have developed software that can analyze a piece of music and checks for its hit potential. And if it doesn't have that hit potential, it is not signed. So the choice of music that you can get is severely limited by the big labels. Then the music lovers are treated as criminals. If you use peer-to-peer, or even if you don't use peer-to-peer, you have the big chance of getting sued by the RIAA or other organizations. They sue you because they say you are downloading music or you're uploading music to everyone else, even if you actually do not own a computer or do not know how peer-to-peer works. And then there's the loudness war. That's something which I come back later to. The musicians are screwed. And not just the musicians, by the way. I'm also talking about audio engineers, producers, graphical designers. Musicians, for the big labels, even the well-selling artists, often get very, very bad deals on their albums. They often get very little paid for the CD sales. Sometimes they do not even get anything paid for the CD sales, because the labels say, well, selling CDs is for you promotion, and you make your money by giving concerts. But even some of the proceedings of the concerts or sales of the merchandise, of that, they have to pay some amount to the record label. They also have to pay to the record label the costs of recording their album and promotion. For example, in an example mentioned by Courtney Love, someone like Toni Braxton has sold $135 million worth of CDs, but she had to file for bankruptcy, because the way the deal worked is that she got a very small amount of her CD sales, but she had to pay, I think, about, say, $500,000 or $1 million for recording her album, another $1 million for promotion, and maybe some other costs. Some of these artists who sold millions of albums went bankrupt because of these crappy deals. So again, I mentioned the loudness war, which I will explain later. The payments that an artist has several ways of making money. It is by concerts, by selling CDs, by airplay on the radio. There's also organizations who have a levy on the sales of empty CDs. If you buy CDRs or DVDRs, there's a certain levy has to be paid on that, and the organizations collect that and give that to the artist. But of those proceedings, only the big artists get the money, because they look at how many artists sell how many albums, and they say, oh, let's say 50% goes to Britney Spears, then 50% of that money goes to Britney Spears. Small artists get no money from that levy. Then there's the problem that laws are getting stricter and stricter of sampling. In my opinion, you can make creative music by using sampling, but there are some labels who are trying to crack down on sampling. There used to be something like fair use, like if you use less than 7 seconds of a piece of music, you could sample it without paying royalties or license it. But now in Australia, there has been a lawsuit where the judge decided that if you use a sample, you have to pay for it, even if it's a very small piece, even if it's not recognizable. And that really stifles creativity. While on the other hand, if a big artist samples someone else, they have so much lawyers behind them that as a small artist, you're bound to lose lawsuits. And the musicians, if they go into a deal, they do not own their own name or their music. The label becomes owner of their music. In some cases, that means if I've recorded a certain amount of, if I've recorded an album, I press, say, 100,000 CDs, they're sold out, and my label says, well, that's not interesting anymore, we will not repress it. They still own the music, and nobody can buy that music anymore. This also used to be not the case. It used to be the case that you sold your music to your label, but in 35 years those rights would expire and you would be owner again of your own music. It's because of this that artists like Prince and David Bowie did all kinds of things to get out of their deals. Prince even changed his name for that. Then there's the loudness war. As you might know, that music consists of many parameters, and one of them is dynamics. It's about loudness and softness. It's about the way it goes from, say, pianissimo to fortissimo. It's the way music is articulated. The thing is, with modern music, the producers or the engineers now use compressor limiters to kill the dynamics. Why do they do this? To make it as loud as possible. As you can see in this graphic, on the left you see a normal piece of music with normal dynamics. On the right you see the result of it being extremely compressed and limited to kill all dynamics. Why do they do this? Because most of the music that is played on crappy radios, on clock radios, on kitchen radios. So you want to make it as loud as possible so that your music stands out between other songs. So that's why they kill the dynamics. But of course, it kills the music. So there are a lot of corrupt organizations involved with this. The record labels, of course, who really screw the artists and are lobbying for really unfair laws. There's the RIAA and Brein. Brein is the Dutch organization, and RIAA is the American one, who are the Gestapo. Oh, wait, did I say Gestapo? I mean the enforcers of the record labels, cracking down on people who use peer-to-peer and things like that. There's Buma Stemra in Holland, GEWA in Germany, who are collecting the money for airplay and for CD pressing. The way that works is that you become a member of Buma Stemra or GEWA, you pay several hundreds of euros, and then hopefully within a few years you get some money back because they got money from airplay or CD sales. It's even so that if you want to perform at a venue, even if you play your own music, you have to pay a certain amount of money first and then prove that you own your own music before you get your money back. Then there's copy levy organizations that I mentioned before. Organizations who collect the money which is paid as a levy for empty CDs and tapes and empty DVDs. Like I said, most of the money only goes to the big labels, to the big artists. But there a lot of those organizations do not pay at all. The Belgian organization for the copy levies have lost their license to collect the money because they just collected the money and never paid out. In Holland, it's even more interesting because there are two organizations and they all collect money and they say that the other organization should pay out. And then there's of course the governments who are very sensitive to apparently for lobbies from the industry, and they make laws which are really very bad for privacy uh, and really weakens the position of consumers and of normal citizens, and only strengthens the position of governments. Some other remarks. You might know all of mp3.com. Russian site sells mp3s without DRM, big collection, several qualities. You can download it in mp3, you can download it in OGG, and you can download it in lossless. They have a large collection according to them, and which has they pay levy to the Russian organizations. So they are legal according to them. And up till now, the Russian law has confirmed that. However, American labels want to stop it. They say it's not fair, they don't get enough paid, artists don't get any money. But then I ask myself, how come that an American company like, say, Nike can go to Asia or to Africa and use child labor for a few cents an hour to make their products and make enormous profits? Why can't I use this so-called globalization to get my music cheaply? But that's that's how the industry works. Only globalization and only laws if it suits them. The good thing in Holland is that downloading music is still legal. If you download music, you will not get fined or sued. This is not the case for movies or software, by the way, and it's not the case for uploading. However, Dutch law enforcement will not be very active in pursuing uploading if you do it on a small, non-commercial scale. Of course, people are trying to change those laws. In Germany, they stopped a directive. They wanted to make a directive that if you upload some music, if on a small scale, without commercial profit, then they would not pursue it, but this has been stopped. They did it, of course this has been a lobby from the industry. In Holland they wanted also to have a levy that people who play an MP3 player pay a levy. The organization who wanted to do that said, okay, we make a levy which is 0% and we'll decide the final price later. But they were stopped by the Dutch government, fortunately. Of course, peer-to-peer is getting better. In terms of speed and availability of things you can get, it's sometimes amazing. And of course, soon we'll probably find ways to have anonymous peer-to-peer use, plausible deniabilities, so that it makes it much harder to find those people who use peer-to-peer. One thing about classical music, I'm a member of a students' orchestra, and the way things work with classical music is, like most things, music is copyrighted until 70 years after the death of the composer. In Holland, a lot of orchestras, they rent music from one organization. There are two organizations in Holland where you can rent music. And they pay a certain amount of money for renting the music and also for the rights for performance. Because this is almost a monopoly, you can get in trouble with that. There was another students' orchestra in Amsterdam who decided that we're going to perform a composer which has been dead for more than 70 years. I think it was Gustav Mahler. And they got the music from the United States, which was much cheaper. Then they, when the organization which normally rents those music out discovers it, they got very upset. Even they had every right to get the music from abroad, but they could make it very difficult for these orchestras to rent other music which they needed. So there is a monopoly here. You mean notes or annotations? Yes, yeah, exactly. And I want to have a little sidetrack to movies. And I want to talk a little remark about Hollywood accounting, because record labels are very evil, obviously. Should we feel guilty about downloading? In some ways, no. Should we feel guilty about downloading movies? Well, there is this thing called Hollywood accounting, where when a movie is made, production is split into several companies. And the way it works is that the profits go to one certain company and the costs go to another company. So if you have a writer or a director who depends on the profits, they often get paid from the costs, and according to Hollywood accounting, because revenue is coming in somewhere else than the costs, officially they make no profit, and a director and a writer does not get paid, even if the music sells millions. That's one of the reasons that Peter Jackson decided not to get involved with the Hobbit movie. So, Dying Giraffe Recordings and the Creative Commons to the rescue, or we hope. Dying Giraffe Recordings uses Creative Commons license. We try to have cheap prices to make music affordable to everyone. We don't do DRM, we just offer our downloads in MP3. We are experimenting with podcasts, streams, downloads, and we also do normal CDs. We use the internet for promotion. We do CD pressing and distribution, and we use internet for promotion. So the way we use the Creative Commons is that we ask every artist that is signed by us to publish at least a few tracks on a Creative Commons license. From our perspective, dual license is possible. This is not always possible from the standpoint of the law, of course, but that we're striving to. People can, for example, part of their repertoire can be Creative Commons and part of their repertoire can be normal copyright. So we want to give the artists the freedom to license their music as they want. Those Creative Commons tracks should be free downloadable on our site. And we also demand that if our tracks on a Creative Commons license are played on the radio, the Bima Stemra or Kewa do not get paid because it's not under their license. We try to keep our prices low, between 6 and 9 euros for a CD, including shipping within Europe. Free downloads, and there's a tip jar if you want to give a donation to the artist, then you can do that. Of course, this is not without problems. So we have encountered several problems on the field of income and payment, promotion, psychotic distributors and artists, recording, CD pressing, distribution, and the system. Short remark about the psychotic distributors and artists. We had, when we started Dying Giraffe Recordings, we got a lot of music in, and some of that music was really crappy. I mean, that happens. Then we got some artists which had pretty good music, but where the artists were really, well, crazy. Once a specific case was this guy where we had a delay in CD pressing and he suddenly started to threaten us and started to badmouth us to other people, and they even tried to sabotage concerts we were playing by we had an evening where there were several artists of our label playing, and they tried to sabotage it by stretching out their sound check so that no one else could do a sound check and no one else could play. Then psychotic distributors. We had a deal with a distributor in England. We gave him money, and he would contact our CD press manufacturers to make CDs. So he took our money and then he disappeared. He didn't react to our SMSs or emails or calls or whatever. He was gone. So we decided to contact our CD pressing directly and publish the CDs ourselves. And then suddenly this guy, his assistant, showed up, and he said that he was very upset with us bypassing his services, and that he was in the music business for so long that he had some shady contacts, that he would be able to find us and that we wouldn't be able to find him, and that he would have violent contacts that he would use if necessary. So, and this is not just a small guy, this is actually a well-known distributor in England. So This is one of the risks that this is one of the things that we encountered, which were quite problematic. That were not that big issues, but it does sometimes kill the motivation if you're really working very hard to set up this thing for artists and for music lovers, and then you get these people. So we have all these problems. So how are we going to try to solve this? So one of the biggest problems is that people download the music, but they don't pay. They don't buy the CDs or they don't give donations. That is still a problem. We have to try to be realistic on that. People are willing to pay maybe some money. Many people aren't willing to pay not that much money. There is also this thing that many people are willing to pay for a certain item, for a certain product, because it costs a certain amount of money. If they see, oh, a CD is 20 euros, I will buy it because it's 20 euros. If they see a CD is 6 euros, then they think, well, it is not such a good CD. That's the way how things work. That's the way how consultants work. If you're a consultant and you ask 4,000 euros a day, they will hire you because you cost 4,000 euros a day. If you ask 120 euros a day, they will not hire you. That's the way things work. And there's also the thing that people can now download everything for free, so why should they pay? There, of course, also on the side of the music lovers, there has to be some mentality change. We keep our overhead low, and most of our proceedings go to the artists. But we do have some costs. We have our hosting costs. We have people working on it on their free time. We have all kinds of volunteers working on it. Our artists are not people who are who expect to become rich of making music. They're people who have day jobs but really love to make music and really like to spread their music. So we need to find ways to increase our income. So we have considered many things, like limiting the free stuff. One thing would be that only streams would be free, or downloads will be limited on a lower quality. For example, MP3s in 128 kbps. We could provide only podcasts, or we would supply downloads with commercials. Magnatune actually does that. You can download the whole album, but between tracks there will be a commercial announcement for Magnatunes promoting them. It's not the way that we would like to do things, but it's something we have to consider. Of course, there's a tip jar. People can give donations. We hope to encourage people maybe to give some donations if they like the music or if they like concert. Or we also need, of course, to find an alternative for PayPal. We really have, like most people, a lot of problems with PayPal. It's really crappy organizations to get payments, but there are not that many alternatives who accept international payments for not too high fee. We're also considering doing Google Ads on our site, and we're also thinking of licensing our music for commercial use, for example, in commercials or movies. Distribution. Until now, distribution has not been such a problem because the traditional distributors were actually quite willing to get our CDs. The problem is distribution is very expensive. Our CDs, if we do them via distributors, they are sold in the big chains, including in Holland you have Free Record Shop, MediaMarkt, things like that. But the price of a CD is about 20 euros, and we sell them to the distributor for, say, 4 euros. So there's a markup about 16 euros for distributors. That's how things work. The advantage is, of course, that the CD is visible in record stores, in big chains, and even can get sold on iTunes. And another thing why we do this is that if we get into the catalogs of distributors, there's a bigger chance of getting signed for concerts. The way people who book concerts for concert halls, they look, if you send them a demo, they will look up if you are selling your CD, and they're looking it up in the catalogs of distributors. And then if you're in the catalog, then they will sign you for a concert. So we're trying to change the system. I mean, this is not just about us dying giraffe recordings. This is not just about our little net label and our artists. It's about the whole system worldwide that we're trying to change for all musicians and all music lovers. So we're doing this by discussing with other people about how we should change things. We're going to discussions organized by Creative Commons organizations, by government. We have been involved with discussions with people from Brein, the enforcers of the record labels, Bima Stemra. And in some ways we discovered that there are people of those organizations are not necessarily that evil. They're not that unwilling. They're just a bit stupid. We're trying to get some bigger names we're trying to persuade other artists to go to Creative Commons. There are some big artists now really interested in the new system. Courtney Love is someone I mentioned before. Richie Sakamoto is also examining options on Creative Commons. And we're trying to persuade other artists to do the same, or at least examine the alternatives. We're trying to lobby with organizations to change laws, so it's not only in the advantage of the industry, but also for normal consumers and normal citizens. We're probably will talk to anti-monopolistic organizations, because all those organizations like GEWA and Buma Stemra and Brein, they often have a monopoly. This is actually going to change. According to EU laws, within a year, the monopoly of those organizations will hopefully end. Promotion is another thing in which the big companies have more facilities than we have. However, thanks to the internet, we might find ways to promote which doesn't depend on such a big network as the old style network as the industry has. So we use the internet, we use MySpace. MySpace has become a quite important community site for musicians. And other community sites, from Friendster to Orchid to whatever, we're trying to promote those bands on those sites, because the effect of those community networks can be very, very big. Of course, concerts are a very important place for promoting our music and our label. We have organized a few evenings with artists of our own label. We've also participated in concerts with artists who license their music under Creative Commons. There's the Creative Commons Festival, so to say. We go to events, congresses, discussions, Creative Commons events. So like the CCC Congress was one place to tell my story. Podcasts and streams. Actually, I was discussing this with Tim Pritloff. He suggested that podcasts might be an important tool for promoting. And I agree. One thing is you could provide free podcasts, but because the way podcasts work, for most users, it expires. For a certain moment, your old podcast is replaced by another. So in that way, people get to know the new music, but if they really want to own it, they would have to download it. Of course, there are always ways around that, but for most users, it's not that practical. But the use of podcasts and streams, we could make a network of online radio stations who make a selection of music, who specialize in certain genres, do the cherry picking, and in that way publish music under Creative Commons. And one other idea was to allow radios to play our tunes for free. They do not have to pay us licenses, they do not have to pay Buma Stemra, but that would be a way to have our music promoted. So we would like to build a network actually of net labels and streaming radio in order to promote this alternative music. CD pressing is also an interesting thing, because in Holland, if you go to a CD pressing plant and you want to have your music CD pressed, they demand that you register with Buma Stemra. And if you want to use Creative Commons license instead of that, they will not accept your CD. So how do we do that? We found some CD distributor in Holland who uses CD plants abroad, within and outside the EU, in Spain, in Slovenia, and countries like that. They were not very sentimental about licensing, and they were very willing to take our CDs. And then there's another organization which has been very, very helpful for pressing our CDs, which gave us a very, very good deal on our CD pressing, which was very enthusiastic about Creative Commons license on our music, and have been very friendly with us. That company was Sony Switzerland. So so we also would like to lobby towards the government to stop these silly laws and rules to allow people to have their music distributed and pressed. Of course, we do not have big studios. That's the big record labels have huge studios with huge Pro Tools systems, and we don't have that. So we're now also networking with recording engineers. There are a lot of recording engineers who really like our initiative and are willing to do the recording and engineering for free or for a small fee, or for example in exchange for a musician to play on his album. We're also networking with audio engineering schools. For example, the School of Audio Engineering, a big chain of schools which specializes on audio recording, records bands for free because their students have to learn how to record bands. So we are making contact with those. We're going to publish and advise people on low-budget home recording. Nowadays, you can get such very good audio hardware, like audio interfaces, microphone preamps, microphones, for very little money. So we're trying to advise people on how they would get their own stuff and start recording. I mean, if you have a PC, if you have a computer, and if you have an audio interface, a mic preamp, and a microphone, which costs you maybe 200, 300 euros, you already have a nice system which you can do very good digital recording. And in the future, we might, who knows, there might be Dying Giraffe recording studios, but of course that's for the future. So what we need is we need to have people lobbying the governments and their organizations to change the system, to change the rules. We want to network with musicians, net labels, producers, engineers, distributors, CD pressers, graphical artists, sysadmins, that they work together to make this network of an alternative system, which is fair for everyone involved, for people who are really passionate about music and not about money, or at least more about music than about money. We got to stop the system from working against us, lobby, change the rules, make an alternative system which shows to be very competitive with the old system. I mean, from our point of view, we are not necessarily out there to destroy the old system. We think that it's possible to two systems to live together. Just like in software, you have the open source movement and you have proprietary software living together. I mean, I'm a big fan of open source. I'm a FreeBSD user I use FreeBSD on my server, but I also use an Apple. And I think it's very well possible that those go hand in hand, that our artists, for example, start under Creative Commons license and then when they later get signed on by a big label. And we need your suggestions. I mean, we're a work in progress. Maybe we're not on the right way. Maybe you have some good ideas. Maybe so we like to start these discussions with a lot of people involved, how we could change things and things which are good and not so good. So, I'm at the end of my talk. You find more information on our website, dyinggirafferecordings.com. You can, there's a general email address, info@dyinggirafferecordings.com, and you can email me at christian@dyinggirafferecordings.com. Any questions?
It's more a comment than a question. Like I'm working for Creative Commons in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
and we appreciate very much what you do. But one thing, and one of the parts I've been working very hard on, is this relationship between collecting societies and people who want to use Creative Commons licenses, which doesn't work at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think there's one thing which you have to be very careful with, which you said is basically like we're looking into this. You said like one of the ways you want to experiment with things is like actually let radio stations play the music you release for free. Because there needs to be some kind of mechanism. At the moment, like it's not, you don't have another option, because like basically as soon as you use Creative Commons licenses, the collecting societies don't let you become a member anymore. So you're fucked anyway.
Yeah.
So as an artist, you have the choice, okay, I go offensively in there and say like, well, then you can play my music for free, because what happens right now, Creative Commons licensed music gets played on radio stations. Radio stations have these blanket licenses, and basically the money which should go to the Creative Commons artists who can't get it just gets distributed among the other ones.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't think that's like so there needs to be a solution for that.
Yeah.
And radio stations won't work. Like their biggest nightmare is, their biggest thing is like, for example, the BBC plays 200,000 different songs a week on all their radio stations, and their biggest nightmare is having to obtain individual licenses.
Yeah.
So what they want is one license from something like GEMA, or in the US, in the UK it's called MCPRS, PRS or something like that. And they would pay more even if they can have this situation where they can say like, I just pay some organization and the other ones have the headache of distributing the money.
Yeah.
So like, and then the option is, okay, this system obviously is unfair.
Yeah.
But like the other option is probably that you end up in some kind of like digital rights system where everybody has to claim, and like there is some kind of digital mechanisms for distributing that. And the question is like, if you're supporting by trying to work against that system, the system where actually like a collective of artists, which these collecting societies are, distributes the money. If you work against that, you're working towards something which will require DRM, and I don't know if you're happy with that. So it might be, and I think it's a much more important strategy to actually like try to work with collecting societies and see if you can fuse systems of free licensing and the practice of collective licensing.
I think you have a very good point. One advantage of having a monopoly, of course, for collecting agencies is that you have one organization you talk to, you pay a certain amount of money, and then you're done with licensing. If you have alternatives like people saying, oh, I do not want to be a member of Bima Stemmer, but I do want to have money for my airplay, you have to suddenly have 10 organizations or 200 organizations where you have to license the music. That is a problem, and I agree on that. So having free airplay was just one of the ideas for promoting, and we're not sure yet if that's the ultimate solution. It might be a way for now for smaller artists to have their music played, but in the future, yes, we would like to have some payment for airplay. So in the future, we would, and indeed, I think we should work with collecting organizations to make a system which is fair. I think in some ways the way collecting agencies work for airplay, it's actually registered which songs are played, and then the amount of money is paid. So it's actually, an artist does get paid for its airplay. But the way it works with advanced payment of licenses and being forced into the system, that's something we do not like. But I agree, with some adjustments, the collective agencies might be a good alternative and better organizations to for our cause and for fair payment for the artists.
How these collecting societies are organized within, because the principle that you actually bring authors together and say like, okay, we are a group of authors, a collective of authors, and we ask you to pay a fair price for our music, results in the fact that radio stations pay the same for like a small member of a collecting society to the collecting society as they pay for Madonna or Prince. Like the price, like there's no, Madonna would be able to make a good deal with a radio station probably, but most small artists wouldn't. So this idea of collective solidarity is very good. Now, unfortunately, all these collecting societies are basically run by people above 50 who haven't like, who partially like there's a story that the head of the French collecting societies have his secretary read out his emails to him,
yeah.
like, and print them out on paper.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of like these people who haven't like, who have absolutely no clue
Yeah.
what's going on, and have like come up with the same situations where you have to pay the collecting society if you're putting your own music on your own website.
Yeah.
Like there's a problem
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
organization how they deal,
Yeah.
but the idea that they are necessarily like monopolistic and thus bad
Yeah.
might not necessarily hold.
Yeah, I agree. The monopoly has a convenience, one agency you talk to, and in some ways the way they work is not that bad. There's one remark about what I would like to add. Small artists get paid the same amount as big artists. However, there's also the so-called payola. Radio stations, especially in America, get paid from big labels to have certain tracks played on the radio for promotion. So that also gives the big artists an advantage.
Yeah, just to add up on that, but we have a basic problem that that collecting societies do not want to make any grounds. I think that Paul has made the same experience in his talks, and I have made the same experience in Croatia. So I think that something's gonna got to give. So that's basically a situation where we have an antagonism, and that some things won't change before they are put into question, or before the paradoxes start to emerge on a grander scale. So I think that yeah, we should strive maybe to transform the collecting societies system, but it doesn't seem likely, because they are basically very old people, and they think that Napster was the first stealing of money, and that YouTube is the next one, and they see this as something which shouldn't be. So they are sort of really out of sync, and from my personal context, I see very little grounds on how to bring them to the reality that is around them.
I have to agree with you and the previous speaker. It's also our experience. Some of our organizations says that, well, you have some points, so we're going to do about it, and then they don't do anything about it. They're out of sync. They can't adapt to the changing society with internet and peer-to-peer, and they stick to their old values. Like I said, they're not necessarily evil. They're just unable to grasp reality. So, could you talk to the microphone if you...
I have a question. There, just a quick one. In the U.S., there's something called the Do-It-Yourself DIY conference for music. Is there anything like that in Europe, where well, it pretty much explains itself?
I know that there are some small groups trying to organize their own conferences. We had some organized by, say, Creative Commons, by pop organizations. So there are some small initiatives on that. Not really big, but the good thing is that the traditional organizations like representatives of record labels and of RIA and things like that were willing to talk at those events. So they were quite helpful in some ways. So.
You know any by name?
No, not now. No.
I wanted to say something about the GEMA, the German GEMA. You say they are stupid, but I think they are smart, and they hack the system in a way that the majority of those are over 50, and they all come from, or the majority come from a Volksmusik and Schlager background. And in about 2001, they changed the system, and they really get a lot of money out of it. And especially the people that are in the Schlager and Volksmusik, they make about 200,000 in some cases, 200,000 euro. Yeah, and so they hack the system in a way. And another question was about sampling. I mean, because especially in hip-hop music, there is maybe 40% sampling in the beats, and Dr. Dre and other artists and beat makers sample a lot, and I don't think that that's going to change. So,
I
you know.
agree. I agree, and I hope that it still will be available and possible. Yeah.
I just wanted to know if you ever think about to collaborate with telco operators. You know, we talk about the negative aspect of some generation before, but let's talk about the positive aspect of new generation. And they are using a lot SMS. And for sometimes for stupid purpose like Star Academy in France. But why do not try to use this way to try to finance your song sometime?
Yeah.
And making collaboration with telco can maybe provide you a way to raise money because it's more secure than PayPal and so on.
That's actually an interesting idea. Payment via SMS is an alternative. Distributing music via SMS is an alternative. But at the moment, especially for small labels like us, it's still very expensive. There's a very high basic fee and very high transaction fees, I think up till 60% or even more. But yes, I agree that would be interesting alternatives. But for the moment, it's unfortunately still very expensive. Could you talk to the microphone, please?
I want.
Yeah.
I wonder what's the difference between your company and Magnitude.
I think there are many similarities, and I think we're very much inspired by Magnitude. We actually accidentally discovered. We were thinking about setting up our net label, and we're thinking about using Creative Commons, and we were doing this. And we were setting up things, and then we discovered that Magnitude has been doing the same thing before us. And then Magnitude has been a very big inspiration for us, and have been much more advanced than us. So basically, we're not that different from them, except that they have more experience. The way that we wanted to start, we started actually because we also wanted to promote our own music of the bands that we know and that we like. But in a way, we're not that different. We also have some contacts with Magnitude. We've talked to the people who started Magnitude, and they're really, really great people, have similar ideas like us, and a really great vision. So I can recommend the grounder of Magnitude has a blog about these things, and it's recommended reading. So.
I get the impression that the basic problem seems to be the payment problem. That you try to emerge a system like peer-to-peer from artist to consumer or hearer of the music, and that the main problem is that you haven't got a comfortable way to pay the music that you want to hear. The things you said about what you try to do to promote your music or get airplay or something like that reminds me of that you try to use the, I'd like to say, old system of music industry, or you try to penetrate the old system of music industry to get your funds. But wouldn't it be more in your sense or more in your philosophy to find new ways of distributing your music or bringing the audience and the musician together?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a very important thing. We do still sell CDs because the majority of people find it most convenient to just simply buy CDs. But we are indeed looking at alternative systems, like I said, internet communities for promotion, peer-to-peer maybe used for distribution of our music, and we are examining it. We have some ideas, but we're not there yet. We still have to think about it. We have to brainstorm about it. And yes, it's a work in progress, like I said, but that's indeed what we're trying to do, an alternative system, not just by penetrating the old system, but penetrating the old system is unavoidable. We do have to have some of it still here. So.
Adding to this, how would you like the idea of a central somewhat centralized donation portal which would operate non-proficiently, where people can directly donate to the artists. Perhaps inside Europe you could just do this with bank transactions without any overhead. And well, what do you think about this idea?
I think that would be actually that would be not a bad idea. If especially if you not just have one central place where you can donate to artists, but also one central place where you can download from artists. So you would have one central point. You can
for Creative Commons, you might want to have a look at Yamendo, which is trying to establish such a central place.
Okay, I'll have a look at that. Talk to me afterwards, please.
Okay.
I mean, that sounds interesting. Thanks. So, I think time's about up. Okay, thanks everyone. And I'll talk to me. Yeah. I'll be here at the CCC Congress the next days. I'll be probably, will be spending around the corner at the notorious Aquaville. Just, if you want to have the remarks, just talk